Hello and welcome to part 3 of creative doodling in watercolour. Today is pebble doodles and it's all about colour and getting to know how your colours flow and what the colour mixes will do. I'm going to start with a series of circles, but don't worry, they're not perfect circles, they're pebble circles, so they're all kinds of shapes, and fill a page with different sizes fairly close together. That. And then that's enough drawing. We're going to go straight in with some colour. Again, I'm sticking to 3 primaries, or rather several different types of primary. Keep away from the tube greens, the tube browns, because they'll just make everything muddy for this. And I'm going to work in very light transparent layers to try and get a feeling of getting the colours to mix and glow. And let's start with some yellows. All we're going to do is add colour to each pebble. Just a little bit of each colour. Let's start with a bit of yellow and then spread into a bit of red. So there's a lot of paint on there. All I need to do is now get a damp brush and pull that paint around and see what it wants to do. I quite like to leave some empty spaces in the pebble as well. Let's get back in with some. The way you learn about your colours and blending colours is with your eyes and your hands. So doing this kind of thing is a good way to build up a visual memory of all the effects that you can get with watercolours. What I'll do for that one. And we're just doing a little bit on each one for now. If you go on too heavy, you leave yourself nowhere to go. So there's too much paint on there. I'm just going to get some of it off. That's better. Let's get a different red on there. And then just for fun, let's go into some blues. You can get to know all your different blues, all your different reds, all your different yellows, and see what they do, how they react when you overlap one with the other. Which ones give you a very soft mauve and which ones don't. And it's a good idea to do a lot of this. If you're getting stale and stuck with your paintings and they're all coming out the same, this will kind of refresh you. If you're not been doing it very long and you're kind of struggling a bit, this is a good way to get to know your colours without the pressure of having to make a finished painting. Excuse me. Let's get some more blues going. It's just a way of getting used to how the paints handle, how much water you need, what happens when you put one colour in with another. You'll build up a sort of reference of all these lovely accidental effects you can get. And what happens when you put too many colours on one and they go a bit in there. Let's go to some nice dark blues. That's enough paint, that's enough paint. I'm using quite good paper. This won't work on really cheap paper. You need proper watercolour paper so that the colours will dance when they meet. So wherever wet bits meet wet bits, the colours will have a wander and talk to each other. And you kind of need to let them do that. Look how they're going all dappily. The nice thing about working on a whole page full at once is it stops you working too much on any one of them. That's again a main problem when you've got a painting in front of you and you're trying to finish it, you're trying to do all of it at once and you're not waiting for the layers to dry and you're putting too much paint on and it can be very disappointing. So this is a good way of making sure that you dance around between one to the other and leave them alone to do their own thing. It's the most useful way of learning about colour mixing wet in wet. You can, if you like, make a pebble damp before you put any paint in at all. It's a similar thing to just going in with very dilute paint, but you get some nice effects. because the paints will wander around everywhere that it's wet. Put a bit in there as well. That's enough, you see. You don't need any more than that on the first layer. If there are places where you think it's too heavy, while it's all still wet, you can just blot some of it off. You don't have to. You can get some quite nice textures with blotting with kitchen towel. Let's do some on there. Gives you kind of raggedy patterns. Wet cotton wool can work quite well as well. That's enough. Let's not do it to all of them. So that's your first layer, and I didn't know what I was doing with that. It was just playing with colours, and let's leave them aside and get back to some ones that are already nice and dry. So this is the first layer's already dried, and I can go in again. Again, keep the colours similar families. If you have too much variation in colour, they will start to get messy. Put some more blues on that. And let's go for a nice turquoisey blue over there. I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I'm just letting my brush go for a walk. It can help if you do this with some nice gentle music playing, because then you can just get on with it and listen to the music and let your hand go for a walk. Let's get some crimson in there. Again, it's important even on this second layer not to cover too much. You've got to leave all these lovely underlayers shining through. You can just push a wet brush through them if you want to mess them up a bit. That kind of thing will do. That's enough. Let's do a second layer on him. Again, reinforcing some of the same colours in places. It's quite nice how this paper is quite bumpy and it will resist the paint and give you lots of texture. And what should we do at the bottom there? Let's go for a bit more red. And more yellow. Some of them I'm just going to leave as 2 colours, so I might go to 3. But you'll know when you've gone too far, you'll know when you've just done one brush stroke too many. Get some texture onto that, dab some of it off. There's no pressure, I don't know what these are going to be. Some of them I'll like, some I won't like. Doesn't matter. You'll learn just as much from the ones you don't like as the ones you do like. You might want to keep the shapes very rigid. If you work onto dry paint, you get a nice clean edge. If you want to work wet in wet, you get a soft fuzzy edge. And usually you want a combination of both. Another thing you can try is with masking tape. You take some tape and tear off some strips. You can put your strips across a pebble that's dry, make sure it's completely dry. Put it across, let's put it across those 2. Make that thinner. Put that across those 2 pebbles, press it down quite firmly, and a little bit across there. That will do, press it down. Now some of those are onto white paper and some are onto a dry first layer. But what I can do is paint over those. And that'll give me a nice clean white area underneath. Let's try some blue ones on that one. So it's best to leave this till it's dry to take it off. Oh look, I've got one there to do. Let's do something in there. But I'm going to take it off while it's wet, just so you can see the effect. Just kind of pull a little bit there because I didn't leave it to dry. But we'll get a place where there's a nice kind of crisp, clean edge. just like a pebble on a beach. Line up the middle of that one. Just experiment, play, get going with this and put them to one side, and when you come back to them just add a few more colours. And when the second layer is dry, you've got lots more potential of things you can do. Just try putting shapes in. Curves, squares, rectangles, doesn't really matter. The key thing is to leave some of those underneath colours shining through, so that it starts to build into something that's not just a flat, one-dimensional thing, but it has some degree of depth and texture and variety of colour, which our eyes like to see. And it's quite nice just to keep dipping your brush into different colours. Don't just be happy with just the one. You don't have to clean your brush between colours. There's a lot of different reds and yellows in this, different intensities of colour. But what's nice is the contrast between the places where there's one layer, places where there's two layers, and places where there's no layers at all. And there is no limit to the amount of paint you can put on these. So there will come a time when you'll think, whoops, that's just one brush stroke too much, but that's good learning, because then you're less inclined to mess up your paintings when you do them. Just responding to shapes and playing and doodling. You can go on like that as long as you like. Occasionally it's nice to bring in other things. I've got these watercolour pencils, which are Derwent Ink Tense, which are very punchy, and it's quite nice to lay some colours down with those. Oh, let's find a spare one. I've started it on here, where you can just go in with ordinary pencils if you want to and create some patterns and textures. But these are particularly punchy when you wet them. Just with a wet brush, then you can spread that colour around if you want to. Just gives another way of adding layers of colour and texture. You can of course play around with the pens, get your pens out, which is what I've done on that one. Once, you again wait till it's completely dry and then just doodle into it. You'll probably find there's some of these that you really like, some you don't, but you'll have increased your internal library of what your paints will do, what your colours will do, and you'll have some things that are bright colour. You can, of course, if you get a selection that you like, take something of them, crop into those, and on these I've put some shadow colour just to make them look 3D. That could be a thing, or you can cut them up and make a collage out of them. You've got nothing to lose, it's a piece of paper. Nothing you ever do is ever wasted. I hope you enjoy this, and do let me know how you get on, and get in touch on Facebook, Claudia Myatt Illustration, or by my website, and hope to see you soon. Bye bye.